All right. Well, good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and a very special welcome to Mr. Johan Nadisi, the Ambassador of Sweden to Vietnam, and our General Consular, Ms. Adrienne de Greer. Welcome. And a huge welcome as well to all of those people joining us online. We know we've got a large online audience today, and we're very grateful that you have made the time to join us. For those of you who I haven't met yet, my name is Jodie Alton, and I'm the Associate Pro-Vice-Chancellor here at RMIT Vietnam. And it is my great pleasure to welcome you to RMIT University today for the Nobel Prize Exhibition and Dialogue 2025. And this is proudly co-hosted with the Embassy of Sweden. This esteemed event honours the remarkable achievements of Nobel laureates and highlights Sweden's distinguished leadership in science and innovation. The event acknowledges 55 years of diplomatic relations between Sweden and Vietnam, alongside the achievement of a significant milestone for RMIT University, and that is 25 years of impact in Vietnam. For those of you not familiar, RMIT is a global university of technology, design and enterprise. For the past 25 years in Vietnam, we have empowered more than 25,000 alumni to become leaders in their fields, cultivating a culture of innovation and creativity across the region. Today's program includes keynote speeches from esteemed Swedish experts discussing the Nobel legacy and the powerful impact of AI on science and innovation. Following this, we have a dynamic panel discussion featuring thought leaders from industry, government and education, who will explore the ethical and practical dimensions of AI in academia and research. I encourage those who are here to explore the exhibition outside. Sorry for those of you online, you won't have the opportunity to do so. But this exhibition has been curated by the Swedish Institute, and it offers an engaging exploration of the Nobel Prize's history and the ongoing relevance of its laureates in addressing contemporary global challenges. So I'd like to thank you for joining us for what promises to be an enlightening and inspiring day. And it is now my great pleasure to introduce my co-host this afternoon, Mr. Oskar Staffas Edström, Head of Trade and Promotion at the Embassy of Sweden, who will share some insights into the prestigious award and the spirit of today's event.
Thank you, Jodie. Excellencies, distinguished guests, esteemed colleagues. It is my distinct honor to welcome you to the Nobel Prize Dialogue co-hosted by us at the Embassy of Sweden in Hanoi and RMIT here in Vietnam and Ho Chi Minh City. The Nobel Prize was established by the will of Alfred Nobel. It serves as a beacon of ingenuity, moral courage, and challenges us to think critically and act with purpose. Today's dialogue focuses on AI's role in learning and teaching. AI is also the field of research which last year's laureates of the Nobel Prize in Physics work in. But before we begin with the keynote speakers' speeches, I would like to invite my ambassador, His Excellency Mr. Johan Nadisi, Ambassador of Sweden to Vietnam, to join us on stage and share some insights into the legacy of the Nobel Prize, its importance to Sweden and the world, and also the partnership between Sweden and Vietnam on innovation, science, and also the strategic partnership that we entered together with Vietnam during Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh visit to Sweden this summer.
Ladies and gentlemen, guests, friends, first of all, a warm thank you to the whole team here at RMIT, and in particular, Leighton Pike and Miss Jodie Alton for their warm welcome and all the work that they've put in to make today's event possible. Good afternoon, everyone, and it's my great pleasure to kick off and welcome you all to the Nobel Prize exhibition and dialogue for 2025, which is, as you heard, jointly hosted by the Embassy of Sweden and RMIT. And for those of you following us online, RMIT is, of course, the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, and we're at their campus here in Vietnam. Let me start with a few words on the Swedish-Vietnam relations, because as we heard, Sweden and Vietnam have a special relationship. Sweden was the first Western country to establish diplomatic relations with Vietnam back in 1969. And over the decades, our relationship has changed, has expanded, and has deepened, moving from a relationship based on development cooperation to where we are today, a relationship based on trade, innovation, investment. As was mentioned earlier, in June this year, when Vietnam's Prime Minister, His Excellency Pham Minh Chinh, visited Stockholm, our two countries signed a sectorial strategic partnership on science, technology, innovation, and digital transformation. This strategic partnership is a milestone in our relations between Sweden and Vietnam. In accordance with the will of Alfred Nobel, the Nobel Prize stands as one of the world's most prestigious recognitions of human achievement. As we heard, it was established in 1901, and it honors those who have made exceptional contributions to physics, chemistry, medicine, literature, peace, and economic sciences. Individuals whose work has advanced humanity and inspired generations. Every year, the eyes of the world are focused on the Nobel Prize. And in my hometown, Stockholm, the fantastic Nobel banquet is held following the ceremony where His Royal Highness, the King of Sweden, hands out the Nobel Prizes to the laureates. This is something I, as a child, followed closely on TV while growing up. The Nobel Prize exhibition that we have a chance to see here outside tells the stories of some of the Nobel laureates, their groundbreaking work, and the lasting impact they've had on society. And for those here in the room, I hope you enjoy the exhibition. Today's dialogue will focus on the Nobel Prize in Physics. And the Embassy of Sweden aims to turn today's event into a series about all the Nobel Prizes that are handed out in Sweden. During the key remarks, we will firstly listen to a broad overview of the Nobel Prize by Dr. Gustav Källstrand, who's a historian and senior curator at the Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm. This will be followed by Professor Ulf Danielsson, who's a theoretical physicist at Uppsala University, which, by the way, is my my university. But he's also a member of the Nobel Committee for Physics, and he will guide us through the process on how they decide who receives the Nobel Prize in Physics. One side note on this, during the visit of Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh, when he visited Sweden, he in fact visited Uppsala and was updated by Professor Ulf Danielsson about the background and how they choose the Nobel Prize laureate. During this visit, I must say, we also learned that Vietnam's first satellite was developed by Professor Ulf Danielsson's department at Uppsala University in partnership with FPT University. This was, I think, back in 2013. Our final keynote speaker, Professor Virginia Dignam, is Professor for Responsible Artificial Intelligence at Umeå University, and will focus on the area in which last year's laureates, Hopfield and Hinton, worked within, artificial intelligence, or AI, as we say more commonly. This is an area, of course, where Professor Dignam plays a key role, as she is a member of the UN High-Level Advisory Body on AI and the senior advisor at the Wallenberg Foundations in Sweden. I'm personally particularly interested and curious to hear if she'll provide some more information about the big AI investment that was announced in Sweden this summer when I was on holiday, where Swedish industry giants AstraZeneca, Ericsson, Saab, SEB Bank, and the Wallenberg Investments joined hands with NVIDIA to build a brand new AI infrastructure in Sweden. I'm sure Professor Dignam, as advisor to the Wallenberg Industries, can say a bit about that. During the panel discussions following the keynote speeches, the focus will be on AI's role in future learning and teaching, a topic that is relevant for all students and teachers taking part today. In fact, this is an issue that will affect us all, including in my own profession, diplomacy. For Sweden, which ranks as the world's second most innovative country and is home to some innovative digital solutions, we're used to embracing change and constantly adapting. And I'm extremely glad and proud that two of the companies that make sure that Sweden continues to adapt and stay innovative are in the panel today, Ericsson and Tetra Pak. And when I say innovative, what does this actually mean? Well, you could ask Tetra Pak and Ericsson themselves. Tetra Pak, of course, has around, I think, 10,000 patents, and Ericsson has around 60,000 patents. And this is what innovation is all about. But we're really honored to have experts from both industry and academia with us here today to share their insights on how we can make the most of AI's potential, also in an ethical and responsible way. This is an important discussion to be had. In closing, I'm glad that this event continues to deepen the cooperation within science, education, and innovation between Sweden and Vietnam. And I'd like to thank RMIT Vietnam for their partnership, their hospitality, and all our speakers and guests for being part of this exciting event. I'm very much looking forward to learn a lot today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for your generous words, and I think we are all looking forward to much discussion this afternoon. It is now my great pleasure to introduce Leighton Pike, our Deputy Vice-Chancellor in International and Engagement at RMIT University. I will say he was called up at short notice today, so it's been especially welcome to have him today. Leighton oversees RMIT's international strategy and agenda, which encompasses global development and partnerships. His leadership drives the university's mission to build robust international relationships and create impactful educational opportunities worldwide. So we are delighted to have Leighton with us, bringing his expertise and insights to this event. Please join me in welcoming Leighton Pike.
Thank you so much, Jodie. Good afternoon, everyone. It's wonderful to be back at RMIT in Vietnam and to welcome our really distinguished guests this morning, and Johan Ndisi, Ambassador of Sweden here to Vietnam, and our delegates across the Embassy of Sweden, industry leaders, senior executive of RMIT Vietnam. As Jodie said, my job is Deputy Vice-Chancellor, International and Engagement, which means I actually work in the RMIT headquarters, which is in Melbourne. And I was here last week because we had the Head of State of Australia on this campus of this university, which reflects what this university is, which it's RMIT Vietnam, but it's Australia here in Vietnam. And as you walk around, Ambassador, I hope you feel that. We're very proud of this institution, as Jodie says, 25 years here in Vietnam, 25,000 alumni of this institution, and it really is a great part of our soft power asset. Actually, I lived in Vietnam about 10 years ago now, and I remember so fondly Sweden as an embassy here in Vietnam, and the impact that you are having, and it's great to see that continuing so many years later. Sweden in Vietnam is at the cutting edge of science, technology and innovation, and Australia is also working with Sweden on that around the world. And diplomacy of Sweden in Australia is a lot more than Volvos and IKEA. I can assure you of that. As a former Australian diplomat, our partnership between Australia and Sweden is also about innovation. It's about shared people-to-people links, and at the heart it's about shared values, which is what brings, I think, all of us together today. It really is that the shared values of Australia, of Vietnam and of Sweden, which allow us to come to this room and to celebrate something as significant as the Nobel Peace Prize with its deep history back to 1901, and able to come here and together talk about one of the most cutting-edge challenges that we're all grappling with, and do that for the benefit of our communities, our students, our staff, and our researchers. Most, as when you speak last, most has been said around that, but I would like to say RMIT Vietnam here, we are a powerhouse for advancing education and research excellence, not just in Vietnam, but really across Southeast Asia. This is the largest international university in Vietnam. It's a university of impact in Southeast Asia, and it's a university of technology and enterprise, and hence the discussion today is so relevant. And Ambassador, as you described the Nobel Peace Prize and its origins and its history, I was thinking about RMIT Vietnam, and there is just so much that is aligned around creativity and around innovation and around visionary leaders. And every time you meet an alumni of this institution, you're left with that impression, and hence today just offers us so much potential. So I look forward to a really wonderful afternoon. I'm just glad I happen to be in Vietnam for this moment, so thank you for inviting me. I'm sure we have rich panel discussions, new opportunities of collaboration to unpack today, so I wish everyone well, and thank you for having me. Now, it would be remiss not to proceed without some small gifts. So I would like to invite you back, Ambassador, and we have some small gifts on behalf of RMIT. Is that right? Yeah.
reciprocate. And four guests from Sweden. One which is a book about innovations.
Esteemed guests, we are honored to present an exceptional lineup of keynote addresses at today's Nobel Prize Dialogue. Joining us online from Sweden, each of our speakers explores unique aspects of the Nobel Prize's legacy and its intersection with groundbreaking advances in science and technology. Our first keynote address is entitled The Nobel Prize, an Overview, and is presented by Mr. Gustav Källstrand, Senior Curator at the Nobel Prize Museum in Stockholm. Mr. Källstrand, who holds a PhD in the history of ideas, is an esteemed author of several works on the Nobel Prize. Please join me in a warm welcome of Mr. Gustav Källstrand.
Thank you for that. There we go. For that wonderful introduction. I'm really happy to be here today to share the history of the Nobel Prize, or some insight about it, and in a short overview, and then you'll have, of course, a much more deeper understanding of how it works when you hear Professor Danielsson after me. But this is Stockholm on December 10th. Actually, this is last year, but this is what it looks like every year in the concert hall in Stockholm on December 10th. This award ceremony, which is, of course, one of the most, well, for everyone working with the Nobel Prize, it's the most exciting day of the year. It's like celebrating Christmas and New Year's all at once. But it's also, for us talking about the Nobel Prize like this, it's a very good way to tell or to describe the Nobel system and the history of the prize, because every part of the Nobel system and what makes the prize important is visible in the way that this ceremony is set up. If you look to the left on the stage in the front row, you have the most, or the guests of honor, of course, the Nobel laureates. Without them, the Nobel Prize wouldn't be very much. And of course, it's the brilliance of the laureates that give the prize prestige. And of course, the prize itself gives them prestige. So it's a two-way, well, it's beneficial in both ways. On the opposite side, to the right, you'll see the king and queen of Sweden. And the fact that the king actually awards the prize, which he has done since more or less the beginning of the prize, it's also a sign of the high esteem that the Swedish society gives to these prizes. It's a way to show that we take them seriously, and it's an honor for us to in Sweden to give out them. And the king and the laureates are, of course, the people that we tend to look at mostly when we look at this stage. But behind them are actually most of the people on stage are standing behind the king and the laureates, and they're almost hiding in plain sight. You almost don't think so much about who they are, but they are, well, almost as important as the laureate, or without them there wouldn't be any laureates, because they are the members of the representatives of the prize awarding institutions. That is the people who actually choose the laureates. And the fact that they are on stage, well, they're there because they're very important, But the fact that they are behind and they're not the focus of attention is by design. It's not the prize awarders that we celebrate, it is the laureates. And of course, behind everything, center stage in the middle, but also in the background is the bust statue of Alfred Nobel, the founder of the prize. Because without him, well, there definitely wouldn't be any laureates or prize awarding institutions. Then there is one more thing that you can notice in this picture that is really important, and that is, of course, well, in one way, us, the people looking at it, and you see the audience represented in the concert hall as well. Because what makes the Nobel Prize stand out from many other prestigious awards is, of course, the prize awarding process is very thorough and so on, but there are other prizes which have thorough awarding processes as well. The Nobel Prize has a very long history, and it has a very broad impact, probably because of its breadth of categories. It's science, literature, economics, and peace. So the fact that there is a big audience present on the day, and also in front of televisions all over the world, is a big factor in why the prizes are so important.
Apologies, Gustav. We can't see
Yes?
your slides.
You can't see my slides. We
No,
tested them
I'm so sorry
before.
about that. Could you try to share them one more time?
We'll try to share them again. Let's do it like this. Can you see them now?
No. Not yet.
You didn't see them?
Not yet. Not yet. Not yet, Gustav.
No, it looks here like I'm sharing some. It's not working?
No, we're not seeing them.
Can you share it again? Share it again.
I'm sharing it.
Share it in full screen.
Yes, I'm sharing it full screen.
We can see your slide now.
If it,
Yes, thank you.
oh, you can. Wonderful. All right, so then you just had to imagine the picture before. Now you can actually see it. So now you see everything that I just talked about. You see the laureates in the front row to the left, you see the king on the right, and Alfred Nobel in the middle. And of course the audience, which you were a part of, but not quite because you couldn't see the thing. So I just wanted to so that, well, good that you see it now. I thought that one reason why I did want to show this picture is because, again, it's a sort of overview of the Nobel system in itself, this award ceremony. And we came as far as the audience, and also, of course, Alfred Nobel, who founded the prize. Now, when well, I want to just tell you something about the Nobel Prize. I also wanted to tell you something about not being able to share the slides. Every year, in the beginning of the prize's history, it was the day after the award ceremony was celebrated. Usually nowadays, it's before the Nobel laureates themselves, they give a Nobel lecture. These are, well, just you can imagine, high-level lectures at the big university auditorium in Stockholm, where you see these laureates. They have prepared thoroughly to give a presentation about their life's work, what they what gave them the Nobel Prize. And it's always very comforting to see these, well, the best scientists in the world, and they're always, at least one of them, struggling with their presentations. Either the slides aren't working or the slides aren't looking that good. So I think it's we're in good company if it really doesn't work sometime. And that's actually also one of the interesting thing about the Nobel Prize, because of the audience. You see these laureates here, they're usually very good scientists, and they're probably quite famous in their own fields. But what happens when they get the Nobel Prize? They're not always used to talking on the biggest stages. Some of them are, like last year's laureate, for example, Geoffrey Hinton is, of course, a famous person known as the godfather of AI, but many of them aren't. So, but what happens with the Nobel Prize is that you get a stage and you can get a voice to talk about, well, things that you care about. So for many laureates, and some laureates are a bit uncomfortable becoming almost celebrities overnight when they get the prize. But that's also one part of the power of the Nobel Prize, that these laureates become spokespersons for science as soon as they get the prize. So it really is a prize with large impact. And most laureates, of course, use this to share their views on science and the value of science. So it's the laureates themselves become part of the message and the inspiration that the Nobel Prize gives, which is probably something that would have pleased Alfred Nobel, who founded the prize. He was an inventor, an industrialist, who most famously invented dynamite. He also worked on other things like smokeless gunpowder. But even more than that, he was, like many of his time, a believer in the progress. He had an almost utopian belief that science and knowledge could create a new and better world. And he wanted to try to realize that himself by spreading his inventions. Many historians who have looked at his life can show that he really the best thing, what he liked to do best was working in his laboratory, developing new inventions. But he wanted to make sure that these were used. So that's why he also became an entrepreneur. He traveled all over the world to make sure that he could manufacture and sell his explosives, which already during his time, but they also got sort of a bad reputation because they were explosives. But he saw them as useful industrial products, which they of course also were. And when he died, or rather shortly before he died, we don't know exactly why he wrote a will donating everything he owned to to a prize. It wasn't known as a Nobel Prize then. But in his will, he did give all of his money, more or less, to this, the idea of creating a prize in these 5 different categories of physics, chemistry, physiology or medicine, literature, and peace. And these are interests that, they reflect his personal interests in science and inventions in both physics and chemistry. And he was also interested in, as he said, that science should work for the benefit of humankind, and then medicine is not far away. But he was also, he wanted to be a poet, so that maybe that's why he started the Literature Prize. But he also was very aware that progress wasn't just about technology. It was also about culture and values and ethics. So that's probably one of the reasons why we had a Literature Prize, but also, of course, a Peace Prize. Because he believed that, progress in technology and science wouldn't be possible without peace, and peace wouldn't be possible without material progress. So he saw that these things as interconnected. In his will, he didn't just choose the categories and the motivation for the prize. He also chose who would give out the prizes. And here you see the press conferences when the Nobel Prizes are awarded. In the top left, you see the awarding press conference for the Peace Prize, which is awarded by the Norwegian Nobel Committee. In the top right, see the press conference. This is for a chemistry prize, but it's at the Royal Swedish Academy of Science, which gives out the physics and chemistry prize, and the economics prize, which is a new category, a memorial award added in 1968. On the bottom left, this is the secretary of the Swedish Academy of Literature, who gives out the Literature Prize, and then the bottom right, it is the Nobel Committee for Physiology or Medicine, giving out the prizes. Of course, nowadays these press conferences are followed all over the world, and it's a job that I think that the prize awarding institutions are both proud of and feel very strongly seriously about. When they were first approached by the executors of the Nobel's estate of his will, so Nobel died and he left his will, and he hadn't asked the prize awarders beforehand, they were quite reluctant. to give out the prize. This would take lots of time. And it was also, even before it was awarded, the prize was very publicized, and people thought that this small group of people in Sweden, that they would not be able to do a very good job awarding this prize. It would be impossible. The New York Times, in the headline, said that this is a task that would surely bring a group of people in Sweden and Norway more trouble than glory. We can ask Ulf Danielsson if he agrees that it's more trouble than glory, but the prize awardees at that time, in the early 20th century, decided that they came up with a system that they thought would work. They came up with the idea of nominations, a nominating system. So it's not that the small group of people in Sweden have to find all the best scientists in the world. Rather, they ask for nominations from all over the world. And that's one of the reasons why this becomes a global prize. And well, I mentioned the status of the prize depends on the award ceremony and the audience, but mainly it's, of course, the long line, the history of Nobel laureates that gives the prize its status. When you become a Nobel laureate, it's not just the selection process and a nice gold medal, and about 11 million Swedish kroners, but it's more that you become a person in this long list of laureates. And one of the most emotional moments when the Nobel laureates are in Stockholm to get their prize, apart from the award ceremony, is when they visit the Nobel Foundation sometime during they stay in Stockholm, and they actually go through the guest book of the Nobel Foundation, and they see, well, if you look at the scientists, on the first pages, they see some of their colleagues, then they go back in time and they see maybe their own teachers, and then they go even further back and they see their idols, the ones that they sort of are really fans of. And more than one laureate in physics particularly has been showing a tear in their eye when they see the autograph of Albert Einstein, and they realize that they are now part of this Nobel family together with Einstein and others. I work at the Nobel Prize Museum, and what we do there is we try to tell the stories of the Nobel laureates. We have asked them to give us some of the clues to what some words that they say were important for their creativity and for how they got the Nobel Prize. These are some of the words that they've shared with us. It's things like hard work, of course, but it's also about having passion for your work, playfulness, courage, and of course, disrespect. And they don't mean that in the way of being rude, but it's about not being too respectful to the authorities and the knowledge that we already have. It's about thinking in new ways. And when you look at a list like this, you can see that there isn't no recipe for how to get the Nobel Prize. The main thing is to find, the laureates have been able to do, is to find their strengths and their fields of interest, and then play to those. And then it's usually some sort of combination of collaboration and a bit of luck that gives you the prize. And to summarize and to end, the Nobel Prize today, from the beginning, it was a dream of Alfred Nobel. Now it's, well, in one way, we can put it this way. In one way, Alfred Nobel lived in the world where maybe it was easier to dream about a time or a society that had been changed for the better because of science and technology and progress in culture. But Nobel, through his prize, he found a way to keep that optimism of his time alive throughout the 20th and into the 21st century. And one way to see this is that 100 years ago, politicians usually dreamed about becoming war heroes, having statues of public statues were usually of generals and people like that. Today, big politicians all over the world dream about the Nobel Peace Prize and becoming a champion of peace. And even if we don't have world peace, it's probably a better world when leaders dream of peace rather than of war. So Nobel has probably, or hopefully, have some impact, and hopefully will have still in the future. Thank you so much for listening, and so sorry that I didn't get the technology to work straight away.
Thank you so much, Gustav. So interesting and thoughtful to hear about the background of the Nobel Prize. Next, we will delve into the Nobel Prize in Physics behind the scenes, presented by Professor Ulf Danielsson. Professor Danielsson is a leading expert in theoretical physics, specializing in string theory and cosmology at the Uppsala University. As a distinguished member of the Nobel Committee for Physics, he has deep insights into the rigorous process of selecting a Nobel Prize recipient. Professor Danielsson will also discuss the 2024 award in artificial intelligence and machine learning, reflecting on its scientific significance and broader societal implications. Please join me in a warm welcome to Professor Ulf Danielsson.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you can hear me. Well, let's hope that you do. I don't see you and I don't hear you, but I'll just go on. So again, thank you very much for the introduction. So I have been a member of the Nobel Committee for Physics for a number of years, and since 4 years back, I'm the scientific secretary of the committee, which means that I have some further responsibilities. And let's see, I hope you could maybe set up the first slide. I can't see the slides from here. I think it would be great if I could see the slides, so I know where I am. I just see myself and I know how I look like, so I don't need to have that. Okay, great. And maybe if you could put it in presentation mode and then go back to the very first slide and then we take it from there. Yeah, now we can start. Yes, what I would like to tell you about is sort of a case study in a sense. Gustav already mentioned the various prizes, but of course it's physics that I will tell you more about, and we'll go a little bit behind the scenes. So next slide, please. And here is the wheel, and Gustav told you a bit about that too. I will not go through all the wheel. I will focus on a particular part of it, which deals with the physics prize, of course. So next slide. So here it is. And of course, there's a general paragraph here about the prize going to those who have conferred the greatest benefit to mankind. And that's something that we always have in the back of our minds. It should be useful in some sense. It could be for applications, for actually making the world better, or it could be sort of for the future, the study of the fundamental sciences. But in some way or the other, it should actually be for the benefit of mankind. Now, when it comes to physics, it's a couple of words there which are very important, which we always think about in the committee, and that is that it should be the most important discovery or invention within the field of physics. So it can be a discovery that might be theoretical, observational, experimentally made, but it can also be an invention, something which is actually of direct use, either to science itself or to people in general. So a discovery or invention. We really like to use these words, if we can, in the citations for the awards. And something which is incredibly important for the Nobel Prize is that it's not, and it says in the will, it doesn't matter if it's a Scandinavian or not. It can be anyone. It doesn't depend on nationality or anything like that. And that is, of course, crucial part of the Nobel Prize. So next slide, please. It started in 1901, and that is certainly one of the most well-known Nobel Prizes in physics. And it's an excellent example of something which is both a discovery and an invention. So Röntgen, he discovered X-rays, but of course the X-rays were also immediately possible to use in practical applications. So next slide, please. So it's the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences that selects the Nobel Prizes in physics, chemistry, and also the prize in memory of Alfred Nobel in economics. And the Academy is divided into several different classes. And it's a class of physics, obviously, that decides or proposes the prize in physics, which then later on the full Academy takes the decision on. And the Academy is composed of a few hundreds of scientists, mostly from Sweden, but there are also a number of foreign members in the Academy. So next slide. The Nobel Committee for Physics is appointed by the Royal Academy of Sciences, and it consists mostly of scientists from the physics class. There can also be members which are from some of the other classes if their knowledge are especially required, maybe because we are thinking about some particular fields of science at the moment. Now, the committee will screen the nomination and eventually make a proposal to the Academy, and I will come to this process and tell you a little bit about it in a moment. There are between 5 and 10 members of the committee. There have to be at least 5 members, but there are also joint members, and currently we are 8 members of the committee. And all of these members, they are part of the discussions and the final decision that the committee makes. And then there also a secretary, and for the moment, I'm the secretary of the Committee for Physics. Next slide. Here we are, by the way. This is the Nobel Committee for Physics for this year, and you see me up there on the right. And we had our our most important meeting now in the beginning of August, where we discussed and came to an agreement upon what we would propose for this year's prize. Next slide, please. So this is a process which is kind of a cyclic process over a full year. And as I also will need to emphasize again and again, to reach a decision of a prize in physics and the same in all the other subjects, I'm sure, that's something which goes on for many, many years, even decades in some case. But every year has the same kind of cycle. And it really starts already in the fall, where letters are sent out to scientists all over the world for nominations. And Gustav already emphasized this, the importance of the nominations. That's really the strength of the prize, that it can rely on all of these nominations from many, many scientists all over the world. So next slide, please. And who can nominate? Well, there are the members of the Royal Swedish Academy and the member of the Nobel committees, earlier Nobel laureates, professors of physics in the Nordic countries, and then, which is the most important part of it, selected universities with professors all over the world, and also certain selected scientists that we have made list for, specific scientists that we really would like to come with nominations. And in total, that means that we get several hundreds of nominations every year. Next slide, please. So the deadline for the nominations is the end of January. And this is really a hard deadline. In order to be possible to be selected for the Nobel Prize, you have to be nominated. And it's not enough that you were nominated last year. You have to be nominated this year. So that means that there are lots of scientists who are nominated year after year after year. And then finally, maybe they will be awarded a Nobel Prize. but you have to be nominated, and the deadline is the last of January, same year. So next slide, please. So what happens then is that we go through the nominations. We might note that there are some new nominations that we haven't seen before, or we can also see that, oh, here we go again, these nominations we see from before. And these are discussed. We are discussing that within the committee, but also with the physics class. And at this point, we also make requests to experts, referees that will be giving reports to us on certain individuals or subjects. Actually, this is not something that we only do in the spring nowadays. We have a procedure now to send out requests for reports also in the fall, so that we get a more continuous inflow of reports. And these reports, they are secretive. It's not that the referees can post their reports or anything like that on the net. No, these reports go to us, and they are kept as a secret for at least 50 years, which means that all these scientists who are writing these reports, they can feel confident that they can say the meaning of their heart, and they don't need to risk that these being read by anyone else than us in the academy. Next slide, please. Then, of course, we have to discuss with the other subjects, in particular physics and, particular chemistry and medicine, because there are overlaps between these fields, especially between chemistry and physics. So we have to make sure that we are not, would be kind of unfortunate if we were working on the same candidates. So we need to discuss with each other and compare notes, basically. Next slide, please. And then we study the experts' reports, and we also have meetings with the physics class in order to report on our progress in the beginning of the summer. And next slide. Then we are thinking carefully about this over the summer. We are writing our summaries of our impressions. And then finally in August, next slide, please. We have our most important meeting when we really come to a decision. And then next slide, please. We, in the end of the month, it's really the final report and recommendation, and there we sign our proposed Nobel Prize for the year. And next slide. Then the physics class is have the opportunity to discuss with us our proposal, and hopefully they share our opinions. They might have ideas about the citations and so on and so forth. And nothing is decided until the very last moment. Next slide, please. So next slide, yes. And then we have the final meeting with the physics class. And then, of course, it's very important to be very good at keeping secrets. And we are very good at keeping secrets, I can tell you. And this is actually where we are just now, to be honest. So this is where we are now. And then in the beginning of October, next slide, please. Then on the same day as the prize is announced, there is the final decision. And that's it. There is no appeal or anything. That's our decision. And then next slide, please. Then comes, which is one of the most important and most enjoyable moments, and that's when the phone call is made. And this phrase, an important phone call from Stockholm, which many scientists all over the world really are looking forward to, and some get the pleasant surprise of being waked up, perhaps in the middle of the night, with an important phone call from Stockholm telling them they have been awarded the Nobel Prize. Next slide, please. This is sort of how it looks like. This is from some years back in 2019. There is a that was a prize that went to cosmology and exoplanets. And there is a press conference and a presentation of the prize. Next slide, please. Now, last year, I don't have much time here, but I will just mention a little bit about the prize to artificial intelligence to John Hopfield and Geoffrey Hinton. This is an excellent prize which illustrates that the Nobel Prize is for discoveries. And these were theoretical discoveries, which also had deep connection with methods from theoretical physics, but it was also an invention. So this was a discovery and invention. And that makes this prize a perfect Nobel Prize in that sense. It's also an example of how physics develops and how its borders change. Because we have to have clear that the Nobel Prize, it has a history that goes back more than 100 years. And Alfred Nobel, he made, at that time, one had a certain notion of what chemistry is, what physics is. But clearly, this is something which evolved with time. And it was just a few years ago that we had this prize in exoplanets. That shows how physics is redefined, and it's not only about particle physics or atomic physics or what it could be. It also encompasses in its modern version cosmology, astrophysics, and artificial intelligence is yet another example, not just as a tool to study the world, but also an application of ideas which have their roots in fundamental physics and theoretical physics and the methods that you find there. Next slide, please. Then, and you have already seen this, a couple of months later, there is the magic date, the big festivities, and that's really when the process, in some sense, comes to an end, even though it also represents a kind of a new starting point also for the next year, for this process that goes on and on and on and has been going on for more than 100 years. Now we can skip through a few pictures. I think you can click one, rather quick to the rest. They show some pictures from the festivities and from the dinner, actually. So next slide, please. Here we have the royal couple, and here there's some pictures of the beautiful diplomas that the Nobel laureates get, and you can click further. More of them here. Yeah, it's in the middle of the winter, so it can be a lot of snow there. And here we see the Blue Hall where everything is taking place. I mean the banquet. So next slide, please. And further pictures from the banquet. And please go on. You can, next slide, please. Yeah, we shouldn't really take pictures of the food, but I can't resist. And here's the dance, and maybe you can go all the way to the very last picture. Well, let's stop there just for a moment. This is just some statistics, and you see here there are several hundred individuals that have received the prize, and but only 5 female scientists. But I can proud myself that during my time in the committee, 3 out of 5 of the female Nobel laureates have got their prizes. And it also shows that there is some change in the way of the science has been conducted. And that's, of course, something which is very, very positive. And then maybe the last slide. Yeah, that's the Nobel Prize in Physics for this year. And as you probably can understand, I can tell you nothing about that. Not even how many people there are. But in a couple of weeks, we will be able to tell you the result of the work for this year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Danielsson. I think now we all have some keys on how to unlock the challenge of gaining our own Nobel Prizes in physics. Finally, we address the theme of Beyond the AI Hype, balancing innovation and social responsibility, with Professor Virginia Dignam from Umeå University in Sweden, a world-renowned expert in responsible artificial intelligence. Professor Dignam leads the AI Policy Lab at Umeå University and is a prominent voice in global AI policy. Her involvement in expert groups at UNESCO, OECD, and the EU High-Level Expert Group on AI underscores her influence on shaping AI practices. In her talk, Professor Dignam will discuss the balance between AI innovation and social responsibility, highlighting challenges such as biases, education, and employment. Please join me to welcome Professor Virginia Dignam.
Sorry, I suppose you can hear me and hopefully also see my slides. If no one says nothing, I assume that's the case, so I will go on. Thank you very much. And indeed, maybe, and I'm very honored to be here today and to be able to present the work we are doing across the world on impact of AI, on the societal and the human impact of AI. Of course, might be a very different presentation than the one before. It has very little to do with the Nobel Prize. As much as Nobel was concerned with the impact of science, the impact and the consequences of his own inventions and others, the field in which I work, what is the impact of AI? Work that has been so much present in our lives and in our world since a couple of years, at least for most people. It appeared not very recent, not very long ago. How can we use this all for the good and for the benefit of mankind? That's kind of the work that we do. I can change this slide almost every time, because every time you open some newspaper, there will be other impact. Of course, since last year, AI has been very much at the forefront of the Nobel Foundation and the Nobel Prize, both in physics, like Ulf just presented, but also very much on the side of the application of technology on the Nobel Prize for Chemistry last year, with the using of AI for protein folding and protein predictions and so on. So both physics and chemistry in one year recognize the importance of AI. And of course, that comes with a lot of responsibility for AI, and also a lot of responsibility for all of us that work on AI to make sure that the impact of AI works in the beneficial ways, like what Alfred Nobel would have wanted. AI is, the questions we are asking is, of course, starting with, are we still in control of AI? And I know that Jeff Hinton has maybe very different ideas on that than what I have and that many of us have. But are we shaping AI, or is AI shaping us? There are as many concerns that are raised by AI than that what AI potentially can solve. AI is by no means a way to replace humans, and by pushing that message forward is in a sense irresponsible, but also very contrary to the work and the capabilities, and also the possibilities, the functionalities that we can do with AI. AI is not the solution to all our problems and is not the only solution to whatever we need to solve. We need to address not only the impact of AI in ethics, societal, and unintended consequences, but also understanding that there is much more to address problems of the world than hoping that AI is going to solve that for us. So one of the things that we increasingly get to believe, and one of the narratives that if we look at newspapers, but also at scientific developments, we get to believe is that to get better AI, we need more. But this more is very difficult, and the definition of better is also something which we need to understand and to discuss much more. And it goes definitely further than the physics, the computational and the mathematical properties of AI systems. For this, we need to really look at AI from a multidisciplinary perspective, including the humanities, the social science, the human sciences, of course, together with all the technical and the natural science. If we talk about AI more being better in terms of data, more data is better. This is what happens with the data that AI has. AI sees a very different world than the one that we see, the one that we hope that is there. And if anything, the discrepancy between what AI sees through the data and what the world is about is just getting more disturbed and distort than the image that you are seeing. If we look at the computational power, then more becomes a problem in terms of energy, in terms of water usage, in terms of natural resources that are used for AI, but also in terms of economic resources. All the resources that we're putting in AI are resources that don't go somewhere else. These choices are political choices, are also scientific choices, but for a large part, they are political choices. And there are choices that we need to be much more aware of how they are going, who is making these choices, who has the power to make these choices, and how these choices are affecting not only the AI that we are getting, but also the impact of this AI in the world. And finally, the power of the algorithms and the increasing power of algorithms is not only creating better or more accurate algorithms, more efficient ways of taking decisions, but it's also increasing and exacerbating existing bias, is creating harms for many, and it's not there without the work and the capabilities and the efforts of many that are often very, very hidden and very, very unrecognized in the work that they are doing. The data annotators, all the ghost work that goes behind the AI that we use every day. So talking about AI impact means to realize that the responsibility is ours. We cannot hide behind the idea, AI said so, AI did so. AI doesn't exist without human effort, and the responsibility and the decision for when and how and what about to use AI is ours, is humans, is societies, is governments, is each one of us. So the responsibility doesn't lie with the machine, doesn't lie with the technology, doesn't lie with the applications, but it lies with us. And we do need to understand this responsibility as we move forward to systems that are increasingly more capable of addressing efficiently and quickly a lot of questions that we would have to do otherwise. It's important to realize that AI is not intelligent. Artificial intelligence is the worst name we could ever have come to this technology. It is not intelligent in the way that we talk about people being intelligent. It thinks, if you want to call it thinking, in a very, very different way than what we do. Basically, and those are the inventions and the discoveries around AI, is that correlation can, for a large part, follow and derive a lot of human understanding, but correlation is, and it can never be the same as causality. and the causes and the cause and effects are not always addressed in the correlations. At the same time, and I said this already before, AI is not artificial, or at least not just artificial. Is built by people, is dependent on the labor of many. Without the data annotators, the data managers, the ones who collect and who check and who every day again and again are cleaning up the all awful type of data and awful type of results that these systems can, so that they don't harm us, it would be not AI that we can use like we are using today. So it's not just intelligent, it's not just artificial, and by thinking that because the systems are so good at interacting with us at a level of language that looks almost natural, it doesn't really make it a proxy for intelligence. So how can we be responsible if all these complex systems are much bigger and much harder to understand than any other system that we have built before as people? How can we be responsible for that? It starts by realizing that AI doesn't happen to us. It's not like the weather, something that we can only control after it happens, but it's dependent on our choices. The AI is designed. We make the choices about these designs. The big questions that we need to address is who is deciding, who should be deciding, what are the values that we are considering, is accuracy and efficiency and speed the only values that we should care about when we look and we calculate the quality of an AI system, or should we look at other values? And how can we prioritize between all those values? Like I said before, AI is not the solution to all our problems. So every effort around AI needs to start with question zero, which is asking ourselves, is AI the best that we can here? Why are we wanting to use AI? Just because everybody else is? What are we gaining by using AI? But most importantly, what are we losing by using AI? And AI doesn't exist in a vacuum. There is no technology fix for all problems, those caused by AI and those that AI can fix. It is also not that there is no regulation around AI, but most importantly, we need to see AI not just as a technical, scientific endeavor, but mostly as a social technical system. A system which also includes those that develop, those that use, those govern, those that are impacted in any way by AI. And when we talk about regulation and governance and ethics, we need to talk about the whole ecosystem and not just the technology. There is a lot to say about governance, why we want it and now what and ever, but if I want to be quick, we govern technology in all types of ways. We trust technology because we have regulations and principles and rules about how to use it. The same applies for AI. And there are lots of initiatives in the world, around over 1,000, which are exactly focusing on the regulation, the principles, to give guidelines about what should we care and how should we understand other values in the development of AI than just looking at the accuracy and the efficiency of the systems. I have been fortunate and honored to participate in many of these initiatives, and still we do need to move forward. And at this moment, political environment is one which is actually pushing back in a lot of the efforts around making sure that AI is governed and developed in a way that benefits humanity. So there is much more work to be done in this field than what we had so far. There is much more to governing AI than just regulation, and I will not go on this, but I just want to end up by making clear that responsible AI is not a choice. We have not a choice between innovating and governing. We have not a choice between innovating and being aligned with ethics, but we really need to look at governance in all these different perspectives as a stepping stone for innovation, the scientific development, and the way forward, because there is no race, there is no finish line, and we need to be much more focused on exploring different alternatives than just all follow us in one fixed direction. And adopting a responsible AI is the way that we can move forward in order of building the trust, driving the transformation, and moving science forward in really unexpected and beneficial directions, which we would not do if we really only focused on one way to innovate. AI is transforming the world. It creates many paradoxes. It creates many different possible ways of looking at the world, but it's not inevitable. We need to start thinking about the choices that we make today, which are really affecting the way and the capabilities that AI will have as we move forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Virginia Dignam. That was a wonderful presentation and very much enjoyed by everybody here. We are obviously very privileged to have such esteemed experts with us today, offering their perspectives on the Nobel Prize's legacy and its role in addressing contemporary global challenges. Thank you, Dr. Gustav Schellstrom, for your captivating overview of the Nobel Prize, highlighting its historical impact and ongoing relevance in shaping global discourse. In particular, I really liked those words of disrespect for I think, conservatism and playfulness. I think that was absolutely fantastic to know that these are elements that are driving how we select the prize winners. We'd also extend our appreciation to Professor Ulf Donaldson for his engaging discussion about the Nobel Prize on Physics, and particularly the implications with regard to artificial intelligence. But I think I was most impressed that he can keep a secret for 50 years. that certainly blew me away. And of course, our most recent speaker, Professor Dignam, your really thought-provoking talk there, balancing innovation and social responsibility in AI, with a very strong emphasis on ethical practices and societal impact. I think it's reassuring to see that AI won't be replacing any of the selection committees for the Nobel Prize anytime soon. So we are truly honoured by your presence and the valuable perspectives that you've provided today. So please join me in thanking our speakers once again for their exceptional presentations. So this concludes the first part of the Nobel Prize Dialogue for 2025. And then coming up, we've got a truly fantastic panel discussion on the topic of AI's future in learning and teaching. And I think it will address some of the questions that we've seen raised previously. We're going to give you a short period of time to gather some refreshments, and then we'll come back in here and start again at 3:50 p.m. So you've got almost half an hour, not quite. For those online, please come back and join. For those here in person, we've got fantastic refreshments. So those online, you should feel a little bit jealous. But yes, thank you all very much, and we look forward to being back here shortly. All right. Welcome back, everybody. It's a privilege to welcome you all once again to today's important discussion on AI's role in future learning and teaching. Today we gather to explore a vital question. How can Vietnam position itself not just as a participant, but as a leader in responsible AI-driven education? Our esteemed panel features a diverse group of experts and thought leaders who bring insights from academia, industry, policy and practice. So please, let me introduce you. First off, we have Nick McIntosh. He is a learning futurist here at RMIT Vietnam who drives innovation in higher education through AI, learning analytics and AR/VR. Thank you, Nick. Next we have Madame Trinh Vo, a friend of RMIT and director of the Ho Chi Minh City Digital Transformation Centre. She has over 25 years' experience and leads smart city and digital transformation initiatives for Vietnam. And another good friend of RMIT, we welcome Dr. Rita Mokbel, President and CEO of Ericsson Vietnam and Myanmar, and she is busy driving strategy, operations and digital transformation globally. Welcome. And Mr. Sandeep Menon. He serves as the Finance Director of Tetra Pak Vietnam and has over 26 years' experience across Asia and the Middle East, and he has led many strategic initiatives and also does much work with us here at RMIT Vietnam. Thank you. And next, I'm very proud of our three academic representatives we have here today from RMIT Vietnam. We have Dr. Tan Pham. He is a lecturer and research cluster lead in emerging technologies in education here at the university. He specialises in project-based learning and generative AI in education. Welcome. And Dr. Santiago Velasquez, our interim senior program director of RMIT MBA and MIB programs. That's the Master of Business Administration and Master of International Business programs. And he's also a lecturer in design thinking for business. Welcome. And though last, certainly not least, Dr. Abdul Roman. He is a senior lecturer in communications here at RMIT Vietnam, and his work focuses on social change, digital inclusion and media impact. Thank you for being here. So in this session, our panellists will embark on a journey where they will examine the current landscape. They'll delve into counterintuitive challenges, more machines, yet less readiness, as we've already heard in our previous session, and the delicate balance between human skills and technological advancement. So I encourage each of you to listen actively and question boldly when we have that session coming up after the panel, and envisage a future where Vietnam emerges as a global leader in AI education. During our discussion today, we will invite each of you to share your questions through Mentimeter. So we'll have a QR code available, or you could just go to menti.com and enter an event code that we'll provide. So at that point you can type in your questions and hopefully it will be up so you could do so at any time during the panel. Hopefully those online can see that. And then, depending on time, we'll select some questions and we'll pose them to each of you. We'll keep you on your toes there. So panellists, I thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And I'll now hand over to Nick, our moderator, who will set the scene for our discussion. Thank you, Nick.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jodie. Good afternoon, everyone. As Jodie has said, we're going to approach this in something of a round-type fashion. 3 rounds initially examining the shockwave of what has happened with the advent of artificial intelligence to us in higher education. move beyond that to look at, does this sound okay? Oh, it seems to have done. Okay, cool. The paradox, as discussed in terms of things that Professor Dignam touched upon before, machine and human skills, before looking at a blueprint, how we can get from where we are now to where we want to go with Vietnam and higher education, before closing with some questions from yourselves in the audience. So to begin, the Nobel Prize celebrates human excellence in advancing knowledge. And today, we will examine how Vietnam can achieve excellence in AI education, not just competence, but leadership that positions this nation as a model for responsible AI integration and learning and teaching. The AI revolution has already begun. A recent major study across 4 major Australian universities involving thousands of students found 83% are using AI tools for their studies, but only 23%, less than a quarter, feel prepared for their careers in a world dominated or at least shaped by AI. We're seeing similar patterns worldwide. And so this section will start to investigate what's actually happening here in Vietnam. And we'll begin, Madam Trinh, if we may, with a question to you. How is Vietnam's national strategy translating into tangible actions in education and public-private partnerships right now?
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for your question. You know, from now, Vietnam National AI Strategy to 20 to 30 is now moving from policy to action. The first one, for education, university open AI bachelor and master program, AI basic for pilots of the high school, MOS and form like FPT, Viettel, VNPT deploy AI tool for adaptive learning and digital textbook. Second one, public-private partnership. Government co-fund AI R&D and innovation center with tech company, for example, NVIDIA, Microsoft. PPP expand in healthcare, for example, AI diagnostic, smart city, traffic management, and manufacturing SME AI productivity. For the next step, focus on scaling pilots, nationwide AI cloud data platform, and ethical AI standard. In short, Vietnam is embedding AI in classroom and co-funding industry projects, turning its national strategy into tangible large-scale action. Thank you.
Thank you. I killed my microphone. Can you hear me? That human element, right? Like it's not the slides, the microphone. Thank you, and wonderful to hear that on the ethical elements as touched on so well before by Professor Dignam. Rita, to you. Globally, we're seeing workers, a study by PwC recently, the Global Jobs Barometer, found that workers with AI skills are commanding 56% higher wages, more than double last year's premium for the same thing. I wonder, from your perspective, which areas of work in multinational tech companies are currently being automated or enhanced by AI, and how is this affecting young professionals just entering the workplace?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me. AI is transforming companies. So here we see it's not anymore an option. It becomes a core of every company's strategy. Obviously, it automates tasks, but at the same time, it enhances the end-to-end workflow. And we see AI today applied in every or in all business processes. For example, in software development, in customer service, customer support, IT operation. It's also applied in sales and marketing. We see AI applied in HR as well. And then I give a few examples. In software development today, we have Copilot, for instance, it automates coding. You can also analyze the log. You can check the deployment incidents. So this means like we are reducing the human intervention and bringing the focus to platform engineering. More than that, we see today startups that are focused on vibe coding. One of the leading one is Lovable, a Swedish startup founded in 2023. And it is targeting non-technical people to innovate. So now you don't need to have a background in coding. You can just create application, website, using AI and using those tools' capability and then innovate. Another example, we said customer service and customer support. We have virtual assistant, chatbots, bots, so they can take complaints, they can record incidents, they are able to come up with a root cause analysis of any incident, report back to the customer who issued the incident, and then activate an automated action in the network so they can fix it. Again, in HR, we see that with AI, you can check profiles, you can automate the process, talent management, you can figure out the gap and try just to come up with learnings. A lot of companies today are doing 100% of their production using robots. So we see that it's AI in everywhere. And then today in Ericsson, we are promoting AI a lot. So today we are providing digital assistant to all our employees, which means that obviously they can go and check instead of spending weeks to come up with the solution proposal or value proposition. This can happen in a few hours. They can, of course, the assistant records the meeting, the minutes of meeting, automatically send it to all participants. We are also providing Gen AI Playground, which means some of our employees, they don't want to use ChatGPT for sensitive information. So we provide Ericsson-specific applications so they can do that. The idea is we want our employees to spend time with our customers, to spend our time coming with innovation, and everything that can be done using AI to use AI for. Not only this, I know it's a long answer, I will be quick. Not only this, we are also embedding AI in our product today. So today, the product that we do, we are increasing AI capabilities and features there. Again, targeting a better customer experience so that they can predict any issue before it happens to our customers. We are creating what we call intent-based autonomous network. So, which means that in the past, we were configuring a network to reach certain SLAs or KPI or performance. Today, we just tell the network what is the priority. We need to have a better energy consumption. We need to have a certain network performance, and the network configure itself by itself. We are also creating platforms for our customer based on templates, pre-configured models, AI models, so they can, by their turn, innovate and come up with applications so they can increase network performance and so forth.
There's a lot there,
Yeah.
and thank you for that. Going from vibe coding to things that I know will be close to Tang from SSET in our own department, in our own university, I beg your pardon. A lot to touch on that we'll come to. But you mentioned things in terms of smart factories or like machines, and I know that Sandeep, this is something that Tetra Pak, in terms of Internet and Things, you've written extensively on this. Tetra Pak is doing a lot in this as well. Maybe, can I ask, initial AI investment, because as Rita has said, there are so many things, and Madam Trin as well, that this touches on. Where is your Tetra Pak's initial AI investment being directed? And could you comment on the flavor of return that you will be looking for there? Would this be efficiency, which is one thing that Rita has mentioned, or perhaps new ways of doing things, innovations as well? Like what's truest for yourselves?
So first of all, thank you very much. Hello. Yep. Thank you very much. Privileged to be here in this panel discussion. To start with, I think as the ambassador says, so Tetra Pak is the leading food packaging and processing company. We have been in the globe around for 70 years and almost in 160 countries. So we embed the AI, I would say, the AI journey as part of our strategy 2030, which is built on automation and digitalization. So if I have to say in few words, it is not one or the other, it is together for us, both driving efficiency, but also improving the value for our end customers as well. So if I take it into three different levers, I would say that if I look at our processing solution, which is basically the food processing side. You know, we have a product which we have built ourselves, which we call Plant Master. So with the plant master, it's like a heart of the entire plant. You just need 2 or 3 people to operate a complete plant of a mega size.
Wow.
Yeah, so that really helps in driving the productivity in the factory. In terms of our internal packaging side, we have implemented real-time failures so that we can work on finding errors in the production process. But also when it comes to sustainability, we have smart sorting, where we have systems which can sort the products or bifurcate the products in a different way. Again, driving the journey both on improving efficiency, but also from a sustainability perspective. And finally, in terms of equipments, I mean, if I talk about Tetra Pak equipments at the customer sites, we are leveraging on the IoT technology where we are implementing chips for predictive maintenance so that we know when the machines are going to break down before it breaks down, so that it reduces the downtime of the equipments and of course increases the ROI for the customer in order to run the equipments faster. So we already see the results from these cases. I mean, we see the measures. We can see productivity of almost 10 to 20%. And again, I think this is going to be the future where it will help us to drive the solutions for future food, in the future as well.
Wonderful, thank you. And my apologies, I've been told to lift my microphone for those online a bit closer to my mouth. We've had some wonderful examples so far of less, AI obviously includes many things. You mentioned traffic planning and model machine learning and everything else, which has been wonderful. Generative AI, which we often talk about, is just one subsection of this. So obviously insights from across the board here. But I want to turn now to Tan, if I may. So through RMIT Vietnam's partnership with the Vietnamese Ministry of Education and Training, you, with Lin, another colleague here, have trained 350,000 educators throughout Vietnam. An extraordinary achievement and just building all the time. Can I ask, what's the most notable misconception about AI that educators still believe, and what challenges has that brought?
Thank you, Nick. Thank you. First of all, I would like to say thanks to the Embassy of Sweden, and very honored to be a part of the panelists to discuss a very important topic. So just to follow up on Nick's question, I co-lead a project called Empowering Educator with AI with another college and expert from School of Science, Engineering and Technologies. What we do, we collaborate with the Ministry of Education and Training, and for this summer, we successfully trained 350,000 educators nationwide. So what we did is we provide a fundamentals of AI skill, how the educator can apply them in classroom. So we've gone through 5 series workshops and talked with educators online. We work closely with experts inside and outside MIT, collaborate with the ministry, and get the program up and running. So to answer Nick's question, what I found out from the educator communities, one of the common misconceptions is they found that generative AI, especially technologically, can do a lot of tasks that teachers can do nowadays. So just like lesson planning, outline, preparation, class delivery, and assessment. However, I think this is a challenge, considering that this is to oversimplify the role of the teachers in classroom. I think the teachers more than that, and AI as a supporting tool, somewhat, being fantasized can do everything. So I found that this kind of myths actually affect 2 populations. Number one, with the people who are very, very good with tech, they are very comfortable and they just focus on tech. They kind of forgot that learning teaching more than that, like pedagogies, assessment, ethic frameworks. So those kind of things that they kind of undervalue those kind of aspects. On the other hand, I found the less experienced, less confident educator, let's say, they kind of worry a bit because they worry that, okay, AI is that a game for tech-savvy lecturers only? Am I left behind? Or what should I do? It kind of lower their motivation a bit and create emotional challenge when adopt their AI. So I found this is a challenge, and if, let's say from educators, researchers, policymakers, we can actually look at these things and have a proper strategic move. I think it can help to solve this misconception. Yep. So that's one thing I can observe. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Can I also applaud you all for the sharing that you've done with the microphones? We have a few spares over there as well, so please feel free. You raise an interesting point in terms of the ethics. And another one that I want to highlight here beyond ethics before we move to our next speaker, Abdul, is the regional pressure that exists around this. Because obviously Vietnam does not exist in a vacuum, right? So Beijing City, just to highlight one example, their municipal government has mandated AI education, 8 hours per year of AI training starting this autumn. Singapore is racing ahead with strategic AI implementation. So this is the competitive landscape rather that Vietnam faces in 2025. But ethics, Abdul, I want to turn to you. Your research shows that AI often excludes marginalized communities. I wonder, can you tell us, what does this mean for Vietnam's education strategy?
I'm just going to share with the good news first. So Vietnam is very progressive and leading when it comes to AI governance. Among the emerging economies in Southeast Asia, Vietnam is the only country that has enacted a law on digital industry, which recognizes AI and semiconductor. And I'm going to go to that, answer that questions. So in that law that was enacted recently, education and training is primarily driver for economic advancements in Vietnam. And then in one of the clauses, there is a word called disability. So the law recognized the importance of inclusive educations, dated back in 2019. So that's the good news. Not really good news is we don't really know yet in Vietnam particularly how we can consistently implement the law across different provinces, especially after the government restructured the provinces and made different things. But again, compared to Indonesia, which is the largest democratic country, another emerging economy that often being compared to Vietnam, Indonesia has a broader perspective toward inclusive educations. But Vietnam has more strategic and tactical tools to implement digital inclusions, as well as inclusive AI governance.
Wonderful, thank you very much. I'll comment as well. One added benefit with this, once we hear from Santiago, is please, this is a discussion, so if anyone in the panel wishes to jump in at any point, please feel free. But Santiago, to you, as a program manager within the business school, designing, as you do, some incredible curriculum and AI innovations for future leaders. Can I ask, what's the gap between what students think they need to know about AI versus the reality as you see it now on the ground in your work?
Thank you, Nick. So, well, I don't see it so much as a gap, but more like a misalignment of purpose. So, there is this misalignment between how students are using AI and what is needed in the workforce. So I think students, and many of us, and I am certainly guilty of it, we use AI like this magical answering machine. And this is a wonderful machine that gives you answers that are coherent, that are plausible, but they run the risk of being unexamined. And when they are unexamined, they kind of also run the risk of giving you an illusion. And I think students get maybe an illusion of authorship. So in the sense that it maybe doesn't sound so bad to use AI when compared to hiring a ghostwriter, right? So there's that problem. However, it is plagiarism, just to make, make a point. But more worryingly, at least for me, there is an illusion of completeness. So you run it, it gives you the report, you feel that you have completed the task, but in reality, you have lost the most interesting parts of the task, which is kind of the effort, the brain cells sparking up and having to actually find what it is that really matters in that project. What are the questions that need to be reframed? What is really relevant? And I think that this is an issue because nobody really knows which are the jobs that AI will take. But the entry-level jobs in the workforce are maybe jobs that are there luring the AI because they are simple jobs that the companies can take new agents and do these jobs. So we need our students to be able to ask these questions that I just mentioned. We need our students to be able to know how to use AI in a way that allows them to be productive, in a way that allows them to be creative, and importantly, to be able to kind of put all these AIs into a workflow that allows them to offer outputs that the competition cannot offer. So in the business school, we have been working very hard to make sure that across our curriculum we include AI. In some courses, you are very well aware of this, we have included personas with different kind of behavioral traits, and then the students get the answer, yes, but we don't mark the answers. What we expect from them is to be able to discern what is important, what they should ignore, what they should trust. So the gap that you mentioned most likely is a gap between using AI as this magical box of answers, and then using it in a way that provides value for them and for the companies that they will work in the future.
Yeah, you raise interesting points. So there's, was it the World Economic Forum's Future of Job Reports spoke about by 2030, the #1 most sought after skill will be analytical thinking. At the same time, as you say, we do away with this with the push of a button. I mean, as well, in terms of those critical thinking, those skills that you're targeting, those entry-level jobs where maybe where you get the reps, if you like, you learn those things on the job. And I know, as you mentioned, some of the stuff that you're doing with TBS is aiming to do that. I wonder, Tan, Abdul, can you comment on any of those things, how you're approaching this? Is there a gap between student expectations and reality as you see it within your areas? Or?
I would answer that question to a series of training on prompt engineering for the deaf communities and then the blind communities in Ho Chi Minh City. So when we're looking at prompt engineering, it is a very, very text-based, speech-based skill. When we are looking at the deaf community, when it comes to digital inclusions, for example, the only word to say angry is just angry. The signing is only one type of signing, angry. When you ask them to tell a story, for example, you need other words such as upset, frustrated, and many different things. The signing system doesn't recognize that. So when we ask them, can you write a prompt to tell your everyday life? They do not have sufficient dictionaries, language, or other things in their mindset when it comes to that. So what I'm suggesting is that many innovations in farm-based technologies often neglected groups that have been historically marginalized. So that is for sure. And then how we can challenge that will require many collaborations from different perspectives. But one thing that I can tell clearly is that most technocrats, most people who approach AI tend to be very, very AI-centric. They forget the idea of human-centric approach to AI. So when we are designing this for our students or the society in Vietnam in general, the socio-technical aspects, the law provided protections, but if it comes to designing technologies, many local developers and international players didn't recognize the importance of understanding the lived experience of the human, and if it comes to inclusive AI governance, inclusive AI innovations, those who are not representative of the majority, the data has been eliminated and treated as outlier. As a result, the lived experience is not in the innovation.
That's interesting. I mean, as was touched on earlier in Professor Dignam's piece, these are a product of the data on which they are trained and everything else. Just returning briefly, just in terms of the skills gap, I wonder, Sandeep or Rita, any comments that you could offer in terms of, because if we are in higher education not training these soon-to-be graduates, are there any skills gaps that you're seeing, a gap between the reality and the lived? Oh, you've got another microphone, I apologize.
Actually, to work effectively in AI, there are a few skills that needs to be developed. You mentioned something, critical thinking. This is super important because the model is good as the data, and the input. So even if you have the data, you need to understand what data you want to use. What prompts do you need to ask AI for you just to get the input there? And then at the same time, for the outcome, the AI is as good as the outcome is. So that's why it's very important lies the outcome here. There's a lot of talk today is that you can ask the tools today available, the AI tools available today 5 times and you get 5 different answers. This is a limitation that we are seeing today, and not only because of the data or how it's trained, because it's also depending on who else has hit the platform the same time as you.
Yeah.
This affects the answers that you get. So today there is a lot of limitation, of course, a lot of possibilities, but a lot of limitations. So it's important that you have the critical thinking just to choose what outcome are you getting.
Yeah.
We are seeing today on those AI tools available agents where it explains how they are using the data and then how they are coming with the outcome that providing you. So this is very important there. Now AI is there to assist, but AI will not be creative in a way. So you need to have the skill to decide what do you want to do with AI.
Right.
So innovation, creativity is very important. Another thing, communication, empathy, all of this complement what AI will bring. Today there is a lot, and you mentioned this, Santiago, as well. Most of the application are large language model. And then there's also a big question, is this what AI provides us? Is this the full benefit of AI? Right. So people are trying to look into what more we can do than what is available. And as Professor Virginia mentioned, AI needs to be responsible. So we also need to develop the ethics skills so that we can choose AI and technology for good.
So I just want to give one example in Tetra Pak. Before we start on any AI journey, every employee has to go through an AI literacy educational program.
Wow.
So they really understand the pros and the cons before they start using any kind of activity. So as you said, it's a bit different. I mean, AI is not going to replace humans, if that's the notion people have. I think it changes the way we work. We have to start looking at taking decisions based on the data set what you have and making the right decisions. So the skill sets, as you said, Nick, it's not about that people should be scared that they will lose their jobs. It's about how you're going to use this data set in arriving at the right decisions, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah, there's that line. It's not an AI that will take your job. It's a person using AI. And so, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And so this is the first round, the shockwave. The next, what we will dig into now is the complexities that have just been raised in terms of this tension, if you like, between the massive productivity, efficacy gains with these machines and balancing that against the human. So just to contextualize that, not just the 83% of students using, but less than a quarter feeling they are trained on how to use them. Employers are voting with their feet here. 71%, again, so Microsoft 2024 Work Trend report, 71% of leaders would now hire less experienced candidates with AI skills over more experienced ones with them. So there's a real value statement being made here. And the question is this gap that we're seeing play out globally, how do we handle this? Rita, I might return to you just very quickly, if I may. Given that industries exposed to AI are seeing changing skill requirements emerge faster, 66% faster than other roles, are there any capabilities that we should develop to work effectively with AI in a connected world? The prompt engineering and everything else, is there any, sorry, I beg your pardon, the critical thinking, is there anything more beyond that?
But on the soft skills there. But obviously, we know that AI is evolving and very dynamic. So we need to nurture continuous learning and then that students just move how AI evolve. I also believe that awareness is super important because as you also said, at the end, it is you using the AI is deciding how you want to use this information. So it's important, that we create awareness about the limitations and the possibilities of AI. Even today, the founder of OpenAI is preaching that there are some limitations. You cannot go and ask ChatGPT how to deal with your partner or how to deal with your son. We also heard last week or 2 weeks ago about a lawsuit in US about someone who took a certain negative action in his life. So awareness is super important. I think this is what we need to educate. While we educate about the possibilities, and then we take our students and our workforce into the journey on what AI can create, we also need to create the awareness how they can use it the best way.
Okay, thank you. Can we steal some of those microphones? I want to stop it. Can we pass some of those down for Madam Chen? Excellent. Because Santiago, I saw your hand is empty, but I wanted to ask you a question, if I can, relating to cognitive offloading. So how do you stop students? Because for all this awareness, we know what this is, but you touched on this before as well, in terms of it's the effort is where the point is, right? If you just get the product, but the process is not there, do we get the same output? So how do you stop students from cognitive offloading while still encouraging them to use AI to develop that critical thinking, to use it as a thinking partner?
Right. So just to be maybe clear, by cognitive offloading, you mean that you outsource tasks to the AI. And I guess that the negative premise there is that if you do that, you're risking lowering, for example, problem-solving skills or critical thinking skills, right? So most likely the best place to deal with that offloading is in assessments. Because if you can do or if a student can complete successfully an assessment by simply offloading it to the AI, then, well, it's not a good assessment to begin with. So we have taken note, and I think the university has been quite progressive in taking some steps on it. So we're shifting the assessments towards also including assessing the learning journey itself, not only in individuals, but also in groups, and also on assessing higher order thinking. So before AI, you could have a managing course where the assessment could be, I don't know, make a report on the entry strategy to a certain country, taking under consideration the global pressures and the local adaptations that are required for that entry to be successful. And that was the assessment. This is not an assessment anymore because it's a low-hanging fruit to any AI. So what we need now is that, okay, they can take that, so it's not about prohibiting them to get that as raw material, but actually then the fun starts when they have to deal with analyzing the underlying assumptions. And there, of course, we need to put them in a situation where they can actually provide more value than the AI, maybe contextualize, maybe analyzing the entry into a certain district in the Mekong Delta, and then the students can provide some kind of real, how the AI would say, nuances, right? And making sure that they also understand what the biases are there, because AIs are built on our literature, which is based also on our biases, and also using AI to perhaps stress test the students. So in TBS, in the postgraduate program, we have a colleague called Danny Fuller, and he has made these focus groups with AI, where students can actually, they send a report to this focus group of AIs, and the AIs have different kind of GPTs, which some of them are, here I'm putting words on Danny, so, but I would imagine that it's, you have some skeptical customers, and you have some competitive or aggressive competitors, and then students need to, they need to respond to this, and they need to stand their ground, and they need to be able to provide also an explanation of how their learning went to provide that output and provide those adjustments. So at the end, the assessments need to be reevaluated so that these easily offloaded components have lower value and that you increase the value on judgment.
That's wonderful, thank you. I mean, your work and also Dan is really actually leading the way in terms of what's possible, extending beyond the old product into something much deeper. Maybe, Sandeep, I might turn to you. I appreciate we're bouncing back and forth between work and also education, but it is where we're going, where our graduates are headed. The World Economic Forum says that 39% of core skills will shift in just 5 years. So in your smart factory initiatives, which you've alluded to already, what human skills create competitive advantage versus commodity skills?
So as I said before, I think it's not about the AI itself, it's more about the mindset.
Yep.
So, we look at people, if I put into three different pillars, I would say one is the decision-making speed. So, you don't spend time on crunching the data. The data is already there. How you make out of that is the most important part. So we look at effective decision-making or fast decision-making on the data. Second, I think we also touched upon this about the cybersecurity. I mean, we want to be transparent in what we do, and of course, apply the global standards, what everyone applies. And the third thing is, continuous learning, I would say. So these are the three key areas, I would say, which actually will take this transformation journey forward, and which also will allow companies to, move away from the normal recruitment into a skill-based recruitment standards, where we start looking at people agility, adaptability in different situations, and how do they react.
It's an interesting comment you make around the ongoing learning thing. It makes me wonder how long that journey will be. The model historically has been go to uni for 3, 5, 8 years, and then you're done. You're in industry or whatever else it might be. Could you speculate as to what that might look like, how long it might take? Lifelong learning, is that the future? Or?
Yeah, so for us, I think, of course, there are two parts to it. One is the university learning, what you can do. But again, if I take example of Tetra Pak, we have a learning journey every year for 1 month, where there are people onboarded from different, kind of schools or even other companies, where they come and actually share their experiences with the whole 20,000 employees worldwide. And I think that's a good platform for us, because then you continuously learn what is not only happening inside, but you take best practices from the other companies as well. So I would say that's one of the examples which we have implemented to continue this learning journey every year.
I love the collegiality of that, the sharing as well, which I think is something wonderful about this today. Madam Trin, we don't have a microphone for you. Could we possibly borrow one? Oh, you do? I apologize. Sorry. Grab one while it's quiet. Madam Trin, a question for you. Vietnam, or Ho Chi Minh City as you prefer, but Vietnam is developing its AI education strategy to 2035 with partnership from players like UNICEF and others. What can you tell us? What are the key elements needed to successfully implement this strategy?
For my opinion, I think this is the great plan for not only Vietnam government, it also for Ho Chi Minh City. For the central government, I think the government should have the very clear the policy and the roadmap for the national AI in education strategy with the clear targets to 2035. I mean that you had the plan for the year by year, because this now it had the 34 cities and provinces around Vietnam, but the many differences between the city and the province in Vietnam. And the second one, Vietnam should apply the teacher competency framework. That is very important. From now, we had the training introduce UNESCO AI competency framework to provide a structural approach for teachers to develop their skill and move beyond simple enthusiasm to actual capacity. I think it's very important. So now in Ho Chi Minh City, we also try it in this November. And another one is training and the support. There are many kinds of work like reservice and in-service for AI training, continuous update and technical support for the training. And the next one, infrastructure and tool. Reliable internet, device, and localized AI platform is very important. For example, there are many some the isolated area in Vietnam, the digital gap is very big. That's why you need to narrow down and also to localize this AI platform for the whole country. And the last one is also the ethical and safety guideline on privacy and bias and responsible for AI use. I also give some example that in Ho Chi Minh City that we try to do in this year. For example, the training program a large-scale training program for the educator is underway. For my department, the S Center has partnered with Ho Chi Minh City Department of Education and Training and Google for Education and AI Education and AI Singapore to train over 10,000 teachers on AI. This program will provide fundamental AI knowledge and practical application such as designing assessment and use AI tools to create educational content. Fostering the competition, this is a new one. We are also coordinating with the Ho Chi Minh City Department of Education and Training and Google to organize an AI teacher competition with the huge participants. So, in the end of this year, we had the result of the competition. For the last one, we think create the learning community is very important to ensure ongoing learning. A dedicated online community has been established where thousands of educators can share best practice and discuss their experience with AI. This fosters a collaborative environment that helps the bridge to get between the AI enthusiasm and practice application. Yeah.
Wonderful, thank you. I mean, you touch on a really important point there, the digital divide. Vietnam is a big country, and the difference from infrastructure to access to know-how, frankly, I mean, across the country, I think might be quite stark. Tan, I might ask you if I can, based on your experience training, again, 350,000 educators across the country, what's the gap between excitement, between AI enthusiasm and teaching capability?
Thanks for the question. First of all, with the training program you mentioned, like I mentioned, we got trained onto 350,000 educators. Just to give a context, we now have around 1 million teachers. So our program actually reached more than 1/3 of learning teaching workforce in Vietnam. So to answer your question, the enthusiasm is very, very high. A lot of teachers, educators want to learn about AI and apply it to the classroom. So even our training program finished like a month ago. Every day we receive like at least 100 inquiry. Do we still open the new training batch? We have to say to them like, this one has to wait until further notice because we cannot provide like non-stop training. But the online resources that we produce can also be referred to. In terms of the gap, the good news is the gap is very, very minor. We have a fortune to actually train some of the teachers last year. So within a year, we can see the gap between the AI fundamentals capability increase a lot. So the gap between enthusiasm and the actual practice is very, very minimum. However, we found that a lot of teachers now, they know the fundamentals. The next step is going to bring that into classroom. So for example, one of the things we're very, very excited to see this coming year right now, like we want to see the teachers that participate in our training, how they're going to apply those from our training into the classroom. And like Madam Chin mentioned, we also happen to encourage them to share the practice in our community. We also are asking them to share the good practice in a small, not a competition, but more like a festival to celebrate the good work and then share how they really apply that to solve an actual problem. So that is the first observation I got. The second one I can see is, the disparity between different school levels. Just give an example, for the school and high school, secondary and high school teachers, they're very, very good. So they learn about AI and they apply right away, and various tools from lesson planning, assessment, and different kind of tasks in the teaching and learning. However, when you go to a primary and kindergarten, because their students are very young age, so their focus very visualized, interactive, song, pictures, video. So they're very, very good at those things. However, they did not look at other aspects like of ethics framework. I mean, they look at that, but not in a proper way and more strategic way, because they have to focus on their student. So I think that gap can be further closed if we approach them from that point of view, say that we got to provide at least fundamentals for all of the teachers at all level. Then there will be certain focus on certain kind of school level. Yeah.
Thank you. I love also the point in between in terms of creating platforms for sharing best practice, as you mentioned that you do at Ericsson. I mean, just fantastic in terms of sharing that across different levels, different locations as well. That concludes our second round in terms of the paradox. The next one is, how do we get from where we are now to where we want to go? A blueprint, if you like. So Vietnam, as we've heard, has set ambitious targets, full digital transformation of education by the beginning of next year. Strategic partnerships, developing an AI education strategy to 2035, I beg your pardon. And the thing is, what is possible with this is extraordinary. Studies by Harvard University, admittedly, there are some that run against it, suggest that with an AI tutor, student outcomes in terms of retention and scores, engagement, enjoyment, double. And in terms of that access, it's just extraordinary what we can do over traditional active learning. Again, higher engagement, higher motivation. And at the same time, we have employers looking to upskill their workforce to try and meet this challenge. So huge investment in human capability development. Madam Chen, I might return to you again, if I can. What is the single most important policy or government initiative needed to accelerate Vietnam's domestic AI talent pipeline?
Thank you for your question. For me, I think the single most important initiative to make the mandate at nationwide is inter-agency digital skill training and certification program for all public sector employees. Why is it essential? Why Vietnam is making significant high-end AI center? Because we try to make the partnering with the tech giant like NVIDIA to build the high-end AI center. The true engine to change lies in the government ability to lead by example. By ensuring on civil servant AI literature, the government can make more informing policy decisions. For example, effectively manage the data and regulate AI with the practical understanding. This top-down approach creating a strong foundation for anti-national digital transformation. For example, for the Ho Chi Minh City model, with the data center, really very important for this approach. For example, our center they try to develop a digital government that can provide efficient service to the citizen and the enterprise. By focus on the fundamental aspect, Vietnam also ensure its AI strategy is not just a collection of isolated projects, but is a uniform normal national efforts with the couple public sector and on. Yes.
Thank you. And I mean, applaud the partnerships that the Vietnamese government has to achieve this. This is wonderful. Yeah. Santiago, I might throw back to you because something you said earlier has stuck in my head. You referenced the object, the content, right? Where if we think about it, the traditional object of education was to jam student heads full of content knowledge and a few skills along the way, right? And if the old destination of mastery of content is gone, what's the new destination? What are we aiming toward now?
Right. So, yeah. Yes, you said so. So maybe the old, but yet to a certain degree, still focuses on the mastery of content. But now the content is, is in our phones. The AIs have walked through, every library in the world. They have read every book that is out there, and therefore they have all this information. But I think one thing to maybe remember is that AIs have this element of randomness, and they will not give you the same answer twice. So they always give you a different answers, and sometimes even when they feel that you are writing a little bit different, they will twist the answer completely different. In the purpose of satisfying you, of making you happy, they will give you whatever. So you will get, again in assessments, because that's in the world where I am, many possible strategies, many possible marketing plans, many possible solutions. And then again, the objective is that our students are able to scrutinize across these different solutions, select the ones that are the best, and importantly, communicate them in a way that is clear and that is done in a human-led kind of vision. And this requires both soft skills and hard skills, so, to be able to have these human-led visions include also, ethics, as we heard before, that they consider sustainability issues, that they consider the planet, that they consider the communities, that they consider the local relationships with the local authorities, for example. And these soft and hard skills, the hard skills have downplayed the soft skills for a long time. It has been a lot about, are you good at coding with Python? But now we see that the soft skills are gaining a lot of attention suddenly. And maybe I think it has something to do with the fact that the answers of the AI, they can be meaningless. They can be bland and they can be soulless and they can even be dangerous. So we need to, as Ethan Mollick, that I know that you are a fan, has mentioned in his books, keeping the human in the loop. And it is important to keep this human in the loop because AIs, when compared to us, they don't have a sense of responsibility. They don't have feelings. They cannot get scared. They cannot get excited. And in that sense, they can also not be really ambitious at this moment. And therefore, I have told this to my students that I strongly believe that there is a premium in humanity. We cannot beat the AI with respect to memory. We cannot beat the AI with respect to efficiency. So I think our students are well advised to identify what that premium in humanity is in them, to nurture that premium and to be ready to defend it.
That's a lovely sentiment. And Sandeep, I saw you nodding along there as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to add what Santiago said, because, like I said before, I mean, if I take example of Tetra Pak, in the last 5 years, we have seen a dramatic shift on what capabilities we look for people. I mean, we are looking at AI process optimization experts. We never had this before 5 years. I mean, we have machine learning engineers in the factory who are looking at, the packaging quality of the product, what comes out. And many more like that. So I think, the way I see it is that it's not about learning AI, it's how we work with AI. That's the most important. And I think rather than fighting against it, you need to collaborate with it. And like Santiago said, I mean, it's a fine balance between the two. I mean, you cannot just ignore the capability of AI, what is out there. I mean, we need to start understanding it, and then, work with it, and then try to use it in the right way.
Can I ask you, you nodded to some roles that didn't exist 5 years ago. Are there others that are now obsolete in your estimation, or things that are becoming less important?
No, I think, as I said before, we are trying to use people in managing less manual tasks, and I think giving them the platform in order to get developed, and then, turn into this journey where they can spend less time, but giving outputs with high value. So that's how we look at it in the company. So if I look at Tetra Pak, I mean, we have 3 key pillars we look at from the leadership perspective. We call them dynamic, capable, productive. So all encompasses into these 3 things, and dynamic, how you adapt faster, productive, how you adapt and then increase the productivity, and capable, as we said, keep on this learning journey and try to embrace these new things which comes on the table.
I love that. That sounds like giving the machines the boring, the routine, and
exactly.
leaving you free. Okay,
exactly.
Wonderful. Yes, please. Tan, I might ask you a question, not so much as an educator. I want to call out that you are, in fact, a comp sci lecturer, researcher, and everything else. So I might ask you to put on that hat for a second, as it relates, perhaps, to learning, but to reach this new destination that Santiago has spoken to us about. Are there any specific AI technologies, that can help us make learning, teaching more effective, perhaps more individualized than before, that you're aware of?
Actually, we have been discussing, I think the panelists talk about that. It's like Santiago mentioned about personas that you have been working on. So normally we are using ChatGPT, we call it generic AI model. but there's a way for us to actually customize those things and launch in classroom. Give an example, a teacher teaching mathematics have a certain subject on algebra, can actually develop a custom AI to support students just to practice a certain lesson. And then that one will include in certain kind of teaching material from the class, so that grounded the model into a local data. That will avoid a lot of problems like hallucination, bias, a bit like we discussed earlier. The second thing is also have some of the human curation, human in the loop, as you mentioned, because the teachers have to sit down and write the prompt, they call system prompt, guide the behavior of that custom AI chatbot, and then when you actually launch that for the student, one of the things you can solve right away is accessibility. Students actually can use them, I would say 24/7, but we know that students don't really use them a lot at the beginning of semester, but they will rush and use it a lot when they reach to assessment and exam. So that actually can solve a problem that we are encountering right now. And if I made in the futures, a lot of, when we ask about AI, they will talk about individualized learning. To be honest, at this stage, that will be very hard. Because in order to individualize and customize to a particular learner, you need a lot of data. So that requires us to integrate the AI into a learning management system. It requires to track the data of the learner, what kind of lesson they do, have they complete this exercise, and together with AI offering the learning path. I would say that one is not really efficient or technical strong at this moment, but I can see that it can be something going to be developed and implemented in a larger scale later on.
Thank you. You raise a wonderful point there with regard to a learner management system. So just for context, this is the operating system of a university. You go online, you use one of these to read your readings, to do your online work and everything else. You talk about these being embedded, which, Abdul, I need to bring you in here in terms of this. I have to ask, because research on digital divides shows consistently that there is the risk that technology can exclude. So I wonder, from your research, from your own experience, is there a single concrete design principle, an action that people could take that ensures AI education reaches those most marginalized students to ensure no one is, or at least as few as possible, are left behind?
I would probably differentiate between AI and LLMs. Most of the things that we discuss kind of LLMs, actually.
Yes, 100%.
So that needs to be clear. So if we would like to design things using LLMs, the answers are out there. But if we are looking at education system as a whole, we think about how we can create a toolbox for everybody that can use, so they can safely use AI to learn. So that is probably the most important thing that I would like to highlight. LLMs are not AI, two different things. And then to respond to your questions, what sort of educations that we can imagine if we have AI? I would say educations that makes human human, because most times when we design educations, we are very, very technological deterministic. Remember during the COVID, we are told to use so many different technologies, we forgot that we are human. And then after COVID, we have the idea about teacher presence, that we are humans. So I hope we still remember that, so we will not repeat the same mistake that we made during the pandemic. So if it comes to inclusive educations, education that uplifts everybody is education that centers around the human, not the machines, not about what kind of work we can do. That applies to the idea when we're designing technologies for educations or designing technologies that can work with us as humans.
Thank you. And you touched on something very important that our third speaker mentioned. One of the worst mistakes we made was naming this thing artificial intelligence, personalizing it or anthropomorphizing it in this way. Rita, I might turn to you if I may. If we were talking, because we're very fortunate to have government, industry, academia, schools, education represented here, what would successful cooperation between these three different groups look like for preparing talent to thrive in a future shaped by emerging technologies, including, as you say, generative AI or AI more broadly?
So in general, cooperation between government, academia, and then industry will create a dynamic ecosystem. And then this is by aligning educational goal with the industry needs. by integrating the cutting edge technology, in this case AI, into the curriculum, and then by developing a talent pipeline of students and then upskill them. How to do that? Obviously, to design the curriculum. I know that here in the university, and most of the universities, probably this is adopted, but this needs to be started from school level, because now we see that everybody has access to a certain extent, how we can teach, and then of course how we can go into the emerging technology. You have the nano AI, Gen AI, cognitive AI, super intelligent AI. So in a way, how we introduce this, how we can promote industry-based sponsorship, so that students learn, but at the same time are able to be exposed to the real environment and do that. How we can make AI-powered application or platform available, and then at the same time a government that can put a regulation, and then Madame Chen mentioned about this, regulation that embrace innovation, at the same time make sure that AI is used in a responsible way. So how to find the balance? In every opportunity, I always mention about the partnership we have in RMIT. Probably this is a small partnership in a big context, but this is something where we have an agreement to deploy AI lab in Hanoi, an extension of what we have started doing here in Ho Chi Minh City, educating, upskilling students on all emerging technology. We hope to see this more and more, because I think it's important not only just to create labs, but how we can create innovation hubs in overall, so that workforce, students come and experiment. We have seen some good practice from other markets. You mentioned Singapore. We know, for instance, even in a country like US, where the private sector is super strong, now the new government is coming and trying to put all together to invest 600 billion USD in AI infrastructure. Yeah. Exactly. We're also seeing the same in UAE or Saudi. So the government is taking a leading approach here, bringing everybody together and then trying to build AI infrastructure. I don't say that in Vietnam we are not doing this. We have very good, interesting projects already started. We heard about NVIDIA investing in Vietnam around 250 million USD, building the third R&D in Vietnam. We also heard about FPT announcement, building AI lab and hub in Vietnam. And in general, our experience, not only in AI, from digital transformation, when the government is taking the lead and then bringing academia, private and the public sector together, miracles can happen.
Wonderful. Thank you. Any further comment more broadly? Please.
So you mentioned about the partnership between governments and private sectors and then academia. We don't really, we see good models in Singapore, What we don't have yet in Vietnam is how to localize models that can work in high-income countries to the context of Vietnam. As Madame Chen mentions, that Vietnam is very, very diverse if it comes to geographically. What we see, and Vietnam is not only urban cities such as Da Nang Center, or probably Hanoi or Ho Chi Minh, but we also have people in the highlands with low-quality digital infrastructure. And then if we do not address the legacy of digital divide, then groups that are now have been marginalized and left behind by the advancement of technologies will be even left behind a little bit further because of AI. Most time we're talking about AI, and then the story will be even worse if it comes to people know how to use AI, but they don't really know how to protect themselves from the risk coming from accessing AI. And kids, teachers, and everybody else need to be mindful of that, and we do not have, for now, the legal infrastructure and then the toolbox and toolkits that governments, NGOs, grassroots actors can use. So that's probably something that cross-disciplinary from private sectors, government and academia can work, how we can provide toolkits for everybody to use to equitably access AI and also protect themselves from it.
I think you raise a really important problem in terms of the speed of change and the lack of, for lack of a better way of saying it, public literacy. What is possible with these machines is extraordinary. Bob, I hope you don't mind me saying, I cloned our Dean of the Business School when the Prime Minister of Australia was visiting. Couldn't tell. No, it wasn't him. It wasn't him. But for all of that, the fact that standing up there, or rather appearing there on the screen, is, for all effects and purposes, a live vision of Professor Bob McClelland was extraordinary. And so this is a live problem that we are, I think, experiencing globally in terms of this. It moves so fast, from deep fakes to, name it. Name it. It is extraordinary. If you like, come and talk after. There are just some quite chilling things that are happening there. But I wonder in terms of time, as it is, I note 5 o'clock, do we want to throw to some questions from the audience? I have a few here that we could run through. Please.
Got some if you'd like. How about I'll go to this end. I don't want to take you on. There we go. It's musical microphones. Thank you so much, everybody. You've done a really impressive job in sharing with us. And I've been watching the questions come in, and then I've also been noticing them being struck off as you've been answering them as you go. So I think you've done a masterful job in outsmarting AI here and answering questions as you go. So thank you so much. Firstly, I want to see if anybody here in the room has any questions. But don't fear, I won't go and pick you out. I'll give you a moment to think on that too, if you like, because I have had some good ones from our online audience. No hands yet. Okay. You guys help me look, because sometimes my eyesight isn't so great. All right, I've got a great one here, and I think we touched on this a little bit about Vietnam and many countries who are actively pursuing their own sovereign AIs. I guess, what role do you think these localised models should take in educating the new workforce? So I think a number of us here could answer that. Who would like to jump into that? So sovereign AIs, and then what role that the localised models should take in educating a new workforce. Of course, we have our own version here at RMIT called VAL.
So one of the things I mentioned before, after the educators, right, they got the training on fundamental AI. The next thing you're going to apply. But majority of the AI model right now have actually come from Western country. Not actually, there are some of the initiatives, like Madam Trid mentioned, like companies like FPT, Viettel, VNG, that are working on a local model. I think very, very important, because let's say that if, let's say teachers, they want to prepare for their lesson plan, they don't have access to the model, don't have access to the textbook that currently being used in the classroom. And we don't know where the information comes from. Like Santiago mentioned, that I go and read the book from the library, but we don't know which chapter did they read. Did they read completely the full chapter, or did they actually skip a few pages? So I think the local model will be very important, at least build a trust with the user. And then the second thing is the bias and hallucination. If the information comes from local, with understanding the context, the cultures, the Vietnamese languages more, I think that will be very, very good starting point to start. And that will give trust, let's say, to some of the educators, not just in the big city, but in the rural areas.
Yeah, and I do think that's really important, making sure that AI is used to represent the whole community. Do you think there's limitations, though, I guess is the other part of that?
I don't think it's ongoing work. I believe this one, you know, that training AI model costs a lot of money and resources, but I think the government mentioned actually really support this. You can see the collaboration with NVIDIA and company to build AI centers. I think this one we will see some of the local model that can be applied and used very soon. Yeah.
I'm just going to respond to that. So the basic question, the question I would like to ask, if it comes to developing a sovereign AI, is what is the goal of that? So if the premise in the developing of this sovereign AI is only replicating the quote-unquote the gigantic players like NVIDIA, the semiconductor is going to create many different issues. But if we are looking at, so let's say if the model itself only replicate ChatGPT, or replicate Copilot, that stems from the ideas of dominant values. So when we incorporate the local context, who behind the local context, who supply the data, who feed, who train this. So the idea of moderating the content, on good, feeding the content, and then training the data is another question that need to be posed if we are trying to develop a local model, quote unquote. Once again, when talking about AI is not LLM, and the models stem from problematic premises by developers. So that is probably a critical question when it comes to localizing AI or LLMs.
Although I guess it's somehow addressing that westernised view of AI in having a localised model, but it shouldn't go too narrow. Is that what you're...
So when we're thinking about localizing, it sounds like a nice idea, but think about who are behind the localizations, who are the developers, who train the data, who feed the informations. If, again, the biases that we have on AI is something that we are still working on to solve. Is creating a local model will create more problems, or it's going to solve bias? So that's probably something that needs to be tested out using empirical data, how we can train the algorithm, the models, but also think about more social technical aspect of it as well.
Great, thank you. Rita, were you ready to contribute?
Yeah, I'm saying like if people cannot access the data or they cannot store the data because they cannot have the data outside the country for regulation purposes, then they will have to create a localized model. And then in a way, obviously, it's a big market, so the data can be created and then the model can be trained. We're not talking about small market, but then maybe they will not benefit from what's happening outside of innovation. So there's always a pros and cons, but it depends on what is the priority and then what is the possibility in the country. Now, obviously, I don't think that anything will happen here will be as an isolation. It can be a collaboration with NVIDIA or Cisco or even OpenAPI. So they just need to have an instance here and then develop it based on the localized. I believe in Vietnam or even in Asia, there is one very successful case, not in AI, but if we look into Uber and Grab, it started globally Uber, and then there is localized Grab, and it's working very well. So why not in AI?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Has that sparked some thoughts there? No? Oh, yes. Oh, here.
Well, I think my question is directed to the whole panel, but also maybe more so to Dr. Roman, as you've been talking quite a bit about it. What should we do as individuals and as government representatives, but also maybe as academia and companies to work against these biases that seems to be partly embedded into AI models? Thank you.
I'm really glad that you asked me that question, because my team and I are looking at AI governance in Southeast Asia. And we are trying to collaborate with some organization that are focusing on using AI in a safe way and inclusively. To give you a very concrete answer, we don't know yet. We don't really know yet. Because if it comes to the AI biases or LLM biases, again, it's like we are dealing with the idea of content moderations on social media. It is very locally rooted. So when we are thinking about how to debunk the biases, it requires technical solutions, how we can train the algorithm and the data. But more importantly is, we have to tell, one, the users. The users. That is something that we're really focusing on. And then second, policymakers need to give more stick to the operator of tech companies. This is, I know it's unpopular opinion, I'm pro-innovations. I'm pro-innovations, don't get me wrong. But tech companies these days need to be held more accountable. For example, recently there was a massive protest in Indonesia, and it was deepfaked by AI. All right? The content wasn't taken down until a few days after the damage happened. That company was not responsible for that because it happened on their platforms. And then we also see the similar things happen in Nepal recently. So again, we're thinking about AI and how to address the potential ramifications. There is no simple short answers, but what I can say is we need to empower the end users, and then second, government need to use more stick. Not because I'm in Vietnam, it's just because that's what the policymakers need to do. And then third, if it comes to innovations, when we innovate, we tend to just throw ideas. We do not really think about the unintended consequences. We learn from Facebook. When Zuckerberg invented Facebook, it was ideal situations, but didn't really think about the unintended consequences. The same thing now, Rita mentions about Sam Altman. Sam Altman now, so he has admitted that OpenAI is also struggling with, quote unquote, mitigating the unintended consequences of AI. And AI become very, very personal because users now can engage directly. It's become companion. That was the latest result, the latest report. So one of the things that we are trying to, that is growing is that the recent case was somebody was telling ChatGPT that he was going to hurt himself. And again, the responsibility was given to the users, not to the creator. So that is something that regulators need to kind of, quote unquote, this is the stick that you have to follow before you invent something. Think about what would happen. And then as users, we need to know, look, you can use it, but you have to know what will happen. I know these are long winding conversations, but I'm happy to speak to you a little bit more if you need to.
Can I make a very quick comment just on the side of that?
Yeah.
Because I think the other part to this is the speed of change and development and innovation in this space is extraordinary. You nodded to this before. Mira Morati was one of the chief technology, she was rather the chief technology officer at OpenAI. She left, and they had a bit of a musical chairs thing, late 2024. Sam Altman left, came back a week later. She's got her own AI startup, and what they're doing is removing the possibility, you mentioned this before, one AI asks 5 times, gives 5 different answers. She's doing away with that. You look at what happened in terms of 2022, end of 2022, when these machines came out, the intellectual capabilities were just a raw metaphor, kind of like this. There are now AI that operate at or above the level of a human PhD in their own field. And they cost. The cost of running these has fallen 99%. In terms of the deepfakes you mentioned, Google, a beast in the space, which is really just waking up to all its potential, they've got something called Synth ID, which is sort of woven into the image. The deepfakes you mentioned, there's as much I agree with you, that's a tragedy. That is also a Facebook thing as well, though. Do you know what I mean? There's a balance in there. But we can, hopefully, with time, start to actually detect some of these things. Any death is a tragedy. I'm not stepping away from that for a second. But the potential for us to see what is happening, see what is changing in this fast-moving space is, I think, evolving with time. So that, I agree with you. Regulation, 100%. They can't be trusted. The death of those kids, no. But other things like this, the speed of change is just beyond breathtaking. And so I anticipate that this will continue, and it shows no sign of slowing. So that will be the fourth part. Small comfort, but I hope some in the space as well.
I think it's linked back to what Virginia said earlier. innovations is not a competition, it's not a race, but we have to put a lot of safeguard before, not to slow down, but before we deploy the technology into the society, because the cost is really expensive if we don't really have good risk management and how to mitigate the potential unintended consequences.
It's almost an impossible dilemma. How do you keep up with change, and then how do you regulate? And as we know, history shows us regulation is often following behind and trying to catch up. So it does present an almost impossible piece. It does link in well with probably our final question, because we're running very short on time now, but it links in here with AI development infringing on people's privacy. How can developers and educators ensure that introducing AI into the learning process, children, who we often deal with here, very young people, are not exposed to such threats? I think that's an interesting one. Does anyone have a short answer for that one? Now I'm posing the impossible dilemma.
Maybe I can give an example as well. So we had similar issues with Facebook, and then the one solution was just to limit it to a certain age. I believe at some point there should be something similar with AI, so that not anyone can use it. Now, I think there is the new feature of AI is, at least this is what they are claiming, is that there's no storage of information. You can always check the logs, but it's not something that should be something easy, especially when it's a mass of people using it. I believe that this is up for, as well, for changes and evolution with time. But especially when it comes to kids, I have my opinion in general, even from the mobile phone, they should not have access before 15 years or 16 years old. We have seen some generic regulation in Norway, in Scandinavia, trying to limit the access to the phone, and this should be for AI too.
Well, we're seeing this in Australia as well.
Yeah.
So limiting social media to 16 years.
I think I'm just going to go back to the existing law in Vietnam. We have the data protections law, the decree on data protections law, and also its impact on the data servers in Vietnam. That is also the idea as well. If all data is safely, is locally safe, I know it's going to be another unpopular opinion again. And I know if you're pro freedom and things like that, local data server is not the best options. But if it comes to privacy and safety and protections, it's probably the best options that we could have. The reason is, if we can identify for sure that the tech companies or providers are complicit, then we can look back on the local data servers that we need to hold them accountable. So that is based on what we know about law and governance in Vietnam. But if we are looking at, again, education in general, I like the idea of limiting time, like in Australia. In Vietnam, it is also important to promote education from home, because that's going to make our job as lecturers easier. That's really important, so we don't have to babysit them in school, including how to protect their privacy and safety if it comes to online interactions.
Yeah, we have to educate our children in a whole different way to what we were used to. So I think that's a really salient point to end on for the question and answer today. And I'm now going to give Nick the very tough job of summing up. I'm just going to walk behind and say thank you, Nick.
Thank you. I mean, immediately, can I say what a pleasure this has been? I mean, we've been on quite a journey from the shockwave paradox to blueprint and everything else. And I would suggest, I hope you would agree, that this conversation today reflects both the urgency and perhaps the opportunity in front of us. This dialogue, marking 55 years of Vietnam and Sweden diplomatic relations, and of course celebrating 25 years of RMIT in Vietnam, shows that international partnerships can help us address our most pressing, even you might say wicked problems, as AI and education is. Our panelists through this entire discussion have shown us that AI adoption isn't just about saying yes to a technology, This is about reimagining everything from policy to the way that the world of work works, to education itself, discussions around ethics, and I love age gating as an idea. I think that's a wonderful idea. I just 100% agreed on that. I think though, my closing thing would be on this is echoing what Madam Trin and Rita have said, that maybe it's through groups like this coming together from academia, from industry, from government, that we can find a way through this path to an effective way that we can engage with this, again, wicked problem. So I hope you'll join me in thanking our assembled panelists for their time today, and yourselves as well for your attention and engagement. Thank you all. Thanks again for the opportunity. Wonderful.
May I also, from the organizer side, firstly thank our panel, which I think was great, that we had government, industry, and it makes me so proud to hear that our Swedish companies is on the forefront on thinking on AI, and also, of course, from academia. And I would also like to thank our audience, both here physically, but also online, of course. And I hope you found it very knowledgeable, or that you gained knowledge and interesting. I definitely did. And thirdly, I would also like to thank our moderator that has done a fantastic job, I think, in picking up these very complex thoughts and ideas and making it understandable and moving the discussion ahead. Fantastic. And fourthly, I would like to hand out a heartfelt thanks to RMIT that has done wonderful work in organizing this event. You've been so professional and amazing to work with. So thank you.